Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pints and Politics. We got Drew and we got Representative Mike Weiner. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to be
Good.
back home Friday evening, trying to wrap up some things, going to enjoy the weekend.
Nice. Yeah, I guess we'll just jump into it today. So, will this be last Monday? You guys had a visitor down at the and St. Paul. How did that go?
The interesting day, actually, because I had my daughter down with me. My daughter Marion came with me, spent the week at the Capitol, which is it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
And she got to meet and take a picture with Riley Gaines, who's well known as the swimmer who competed against what's his
Leah
name? Leah
Thomas.
Thompson? Leah
Leah
Thomas.
Thomas.
Yep.
I guess I don't know so it was a man transitioned to a woman, and I don't know the man name. I just know the transition name.
I don't think he had the surgery though, did he?
No, no, and you can see that in the pictures. Like
So
not
then I
like
don't know how
fully
much
see
of a
it in the pictures, but
transition that is.
yeah, no, you can tell. You can tell.
I didn't look that closely. Um,
Um,
appreciate you. Lord, I apologize.
the Adam's apple does stick out, and it is a tell. And that being
Well,
said, there is some other things that I guess I learned against my will, as it
stood out
were.
being an indicator, perhaps.
Yeah, wasn't really wanting to, but it's a tell.
Okay.
And I believe they tied at that national swim meet too.
Well, no, didn't maybe I didn't read this right, but didn't they take away his trophy and give it to Riley Gaines or the
No, it
other
was
way?
the other way around. I believe they tied, and Ethan, you can fact check me on this. I believe they tied, and Riley asked if they could split the trophy, and they
Right.
said no. We got to give it to Leah because it looks better to
But
give it
I
to.
thought since they have taken the award away from Leah Thompson and given it to Riley Gaines.
See, I don't know that one.
I'm gonna have
Did
to.
Riley talk about that at the Capitol?
No, she didn't. We didn't get a whole lot of time to talk about stuff.
Okay.
Got down there Monday with my daughter, and they had the rally in the morning. We had the chance to meet her first in the Capitol. Went outside for the rally, which was, I think, well attended. A lot of people
Yeah.
there. So that was kind of neat. Some good speakers, and then went upstairs. We had session after that. We had caucus and a session about the girls or boys and girls sports.
Yep.
So that was the bill that was on the floor that day, the Peggy Scott bill, and for my daughter, it was kind of a neat experience. So here she gets to meet a celebrity, right? Gets to
Right.
be at the Capitol for an interesting debate on the floor, but then also sees the other side of this because the protesters were there for trans activists, I guess you would call them.
Yeah.
So, and what I noticed was the one thing that stands out really to me was when the rally was going on with Riley Gaines and saying we shouldn't have boys and girls sports, what I saw was respectful. I saw, you know, um, well attended, polite, everything else. And it wasn't disruptive. What happened when we were in the Capitol after we get done with our caucus meeting and we go up to the floor, in front of the chamber is packed with activists. And I literally had to kind of almost push my way through just to get to the door or just to get to the entrance of the chamber.
Really.
And that's kind of rude to me, and then there's a lot of noise and chanting and everything else. And if you're going to convince somebody that your point of view is correct, I'm not sure if making a bunch of noise and ruckus outside the chamber is the best way to do that.
Isn't okay, this might be a tangent, but isn't that in Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals? Is to make your
Oh,
opponent uncomfortable? I believe you've read that book more than I have.
I have. But it's perception of public perception, basically. And
Hmm.
if you could show that you have more people there, more support for it than you actually do, that is something in rules for radicals. So it is a tactic that's been used long before rules for radicals, but very effectively with the Democrat machine and so forth.
Yeah,
It was even discussed on the bill or in the floor, the small number of trans athletes. Well, they had a lot of protesters there that day.
yep.
So kind of follows the same pattern. And from what I had heard, a lot of those protesters were bussed in from other places.
That sounds familiar to me.
That does. It seems to happen a lot.
Yeah, but busing in protesters, that seems to be a theme in Minnesota, which is unfortunate, but
It is. I'm going to
hey,
try to look up, did Riley Gaines get her, um, did she get her award?
no. What was that at? Oh, at the are you talking about for the Nationals?
Yes.
Okay. Well, while you do that, I'll talk about some things that I've heard about this men and women's sports bill. And like, so the thing that really kind of confuses me because I feel like Title IX already covers this, so I suppose that's kind of weird. That's why it's kind of weird to me. But I know that it passed that banning men and women's sports at the high school level. It did pass at the House for Minnesota and not at the Senate. And so one of the things to look at is whether or not we actually continue to push transgenderism in sports, especially considering how literally the next day Donald Trump was talking about how he signed his executive order that bans men from competing in women's sports and how he's going to pull federal funding from any school who does that or from any state who allows it.
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't, and Walls doesn't have the capacity, and the Democrats don't have the capacity to raise taxes to compensate for that federal funding. And in Minnesota, we're going to see a big budget battle. We might, depending on how this whole transgender issue continues. And I
So
guess,
that's really the technique that's been used by the federal government for education for quite some time.
well, it's been
It's
used for a lot of things.
right. It's
Yeah.
to promote an agenda. So
Hmm.
now that Trump is doing it in reverse or to reverse some of the things that have been done in the past, people are upset. But that's really what has been the tactics, the carrot and the stick mentality. We're
Yeah.
going to entice you with these dollars, and if you don't do it, then we're going to hit you with the stick. You know, so that's been used before. But there was something that when you're sitting debating these floor bills and stuff, there's something that kind of hit me, and there was discussion about the trans issues and so forth. And I'm going to coin a word here. I mean, we should hashtag this really. Okay, so as we're sitting there being lectured about trans issues and stuff, I thought of the term mansplaining, right?
Yeah.
Mansplaining is when a man is talking in a condescending or patronizing way to a woman, right?
Right.
So what I heard on the floor was trans activists and talking about in a condescending, patronizing way to women. So would that be then transplaining?
Hashtag. One second, I gotta write this down here. Transplaining.
I don't think that anybody's ever used it before. I think I just invented a new word.
There you go. Oh my goodness. Well, and they do that a lot. If I'm not on TikTok, but I've seen TikToks of trans activists and pro transgender individuals speaking in a condescending way, especially when they talk about their pronouns. And
Exactly.
yeah, and it's such a turnoff for me specifically, whereas they talk about how they want to be respected and treated as equals, and then they come out as like my genders are like sir and z and ik valley gender, and I have no idea what any of that means. And they say if you don't really respect that, you're a bad person. It's like, okay, well, screw you. So it's immediately like shut down and everything.
Right. So those trans activists were transplaining to you.
Yeah, transplanting. It's
Transplaining.
definitely a thing. You say the word, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I get it. I've seen it. I haven't
Hmm.
experienced it, but I've seen it.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah,
Transplaining.
yeah. Everyone has to credit Representative Mike Weiner on the
That's right.
transplain. Yeah,
Transplaining.
that's so funny.
But it was an interesting day, to see both sides of that argument. And I listen to the debates on the floor because I also try to put myself in other people's position or shoes or whatever. And I really have a tough time understanding how you cannot understand or how you cannot look at the biology of this and know that men are built different than women.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if you
our
look at
education has been going down for the past 30 years.
yes,
We're fully funding education, but maybe there's something wrong there. But
yeah, I just look at it though, and like I said, the biology understanding have played sports, through the years, and I think back to there was one gal many years ago that was in track and field with us,
yeah.
and she was a heck of a shot putter. She really was. She was impressive. But think of all the sports that have a difference for the competition,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the ladies' shot put, I believe, is 8 pounds, where the men's is 12.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you've got a difference in the shot put, the weight of the shot put. How about a golf course?
Yep. Yep. The ladies' tees are up further. In fact, I don't know how much golfing you do, Mike, but there's a joke, like an inside joke for golfers, that if you're a guy and you don't hit it past the ladies' tee, you're subject to ridicule, and there's some hazing involved where you have to take your pants down for the next shot until you can hit past the ladies' tee. Kind
I've
of like
never
in
heard
your.
that one, and that's a good thing I don't golf then, I guess.
That's fair. I'm just don't golf with frat bros. They'll
Yeah.
get you.
Thanks for the warning.
Yep.
But no,
But
think of
that's
all those sports, and that's not diminishing what women do in sports. It's really not. But there is definitely a difference. And that we have to explain it. And it's not every single one, you know. But
right.
by and large, women are built different than men. It's really not that hard to figure out. The other thing I thought about listening to the debates is when we talk about history, right? And they find a body that's buried from 500 or 1,000 years ago or whatever else, they say this is a female, this age bracket, and this is a male, this age bracket. Well, how do they know that? Because the bone structure is different.
Yeah.
They can look at this and tell us, well, there's biological differences between men and women. It's not that hard to figure out and to say that, you know, if you want to give them a fair shake, if you want to be on a level playing field, well, we probably shouldn't be putting men into girls' sports. It's not that tough to figure out. And the other thing is, as a father, as a husband, it's my duty to protect my girls, my
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to protect my wife, you know, and it's not condescending. It's because I value them so much. They are precious to me. If money is your thing, you're going to value it, you're going to hoard it, you're going to, love it or whatever. Men, we protect, we take care of the women in our lives. That's our responsibility. And it's actually a thing to be celebrated, not looked down upon. So for if my girls are playing in boys' sports, I'm sorry, if a boy is playing in girls' sports and can overpower and hurt them, yeah, I'm gonna protect and defend my little girls, no matter
Right.
how old they are. They're always gonna be my little girls.
Once a dad, always a dad, huh?
That's right.
That's great.
So
So,
yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening at the national level going into this, and how did we get to this point? Is the other thing. Think about it. Title IX 40 years ago or whatever it was, just to have women have a fair shake, and now they're getting attacked by men who are acting or dressing, identifying as women.
this might. how this? Put a pin in this. Write it down on a notepad or something, Mike. We'll have to. Maybe we'll dedicate a whole episode to how we got to this point because we could spend hours and hours on it potentially, and then we'd have to boil it down and do a 20 to 30 minute podcast episode for everyone.
Well, we try to make things simple, right?
Right.
It's easy to understand if it's simple.
If I
Well,
were to boil it down into one sentence for how we got to where we are now, I would say we let empathy, well, through our laziness, we allowed empathy to essentially dictate degeneracy or to tolerate degeneracy. That's how I want to say it. So through our laziness, cultural laziness, we have allowed through empathy tolerance towards degenerate behavior. So that's how I would boil it down into one sentence and how we got to this point.
I'm thinking a longer discussion might be in order.
And that's the idea. Yeah, we will.
I have a
And
whole nature
to the
versus nurture.
audience, yeah, to the audience, leave a comment down below, and put your 2 cents in so we can address it. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
we do
this
have some
is
other topics. We might have to come back to this one another time.
oh we 100% do, Mike. We have to do a full dedicated spiel to how we got to this point because it's so complex. It can't just it's not just one. It's not just the trans issue. It is so much more.
I
Trans
agree.
is just a symptom of it, I would say. And
Yep,
speaking
totally agree.
of this point, specifically in history, we recently, the day after Riley Gaines showed up to the Capitol and gave you guys a stunning rally full of fun and excitement and trannies, Donald Trump gave a speech to a joint session of Congress. I'm told it's supposed to be called a speech to a joint session of Congress and not a State of the Union because it's his first speech as newly elected non-consecutive, if that makes sense.
Right, and
Yes.
that was my understanding of it as well. Um, is it much different than a regular State of the Union address?
I
Probably
don't
not.
know. It's full of pomp and circumstance and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And that honestly, speaking of State of the Union, I don't think I could ever stand up and sit down for ovations that long. I'd either break my legs on purpose or lose my mind.
People get upset and
Yeah, they get mad at you if you don't stand and clap. It's like, what if I sit and clap? Like, what if you have bad knees? You know, you got to stand up and sit down 500 times in 20 minutes? Nah, I don't think so.
it's something.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's that big of a deal to stand and clap at some of these things. I understand that it's a lot, like you said, pomp and circumstance, but it's show. A lot of it is political
oh yeah.
theater that
And
happens
I'm
on so many different
so
levels.
so glad you mentioned that because watching, I'm going to call it the State of the Union 2025 easier. And within the first 10 minutes of Donald Trump speaking, Representative Al Green got kicked out. He got escorted out by the sergeant at arms. I don't know if you know that, Mike.
No, I did not listen to the whole speech. I've only caught bits
Yeah.
and pieces of it, news stuff. But when I saw that and I saw that news clip, first of all, I do respect the position. Whether it's Trump in office or when Biden was in office or Obama was in office, to make a show of it, once again, that political theater,
Mm-hmm.
start yelling, harassing, doing what he was doing, what Al Green was doing. I
He was
just think
shaking a
that's
stick at him.
disrespectful.
He
Yeah,
actually shook his cane at him. And
and he
yeah,
was
it's
he was corrected. Mike Johnson told him to, calm down, basically.
yep,
And I don't remember the exact words he said, but he said if it doesn't stop, he'll clear the chamber. Well,
right.
you had a warning. You didn't listen. I mean, let's be respectful. I would do it for anybody else. I just don't like that in politics. I think we
Yeah.
can.
Well, it shows disunity, which is not good. just in general for any kind of government or people who are supposed to be on the same team. And I thought it was unbecoming of a representative. I kind of expect better from them. Like
I
there's a
agree.
way if he has an issue and he wants to cause a scene somewhere else. The State of the Union, like I like watching State of the Union because I like to know what's going on, kind of like a news thing. And
Mm-hmm.
my favorite part of Trump's State of the Union this year was how he gave a list of everything he's done in the 43 days that he's been president of the United States, which the list is long, expansive. It's fantastic. He talks about all of the budget cuts he made, saving money, whole list. And I wrote some of them down. And I think my favorite one that he cut was probably the funding circumcision in Mozambique. Like, I don't understand why we would do that. I think they have knives over there, but he also cut funding to programs that were studying transitioning mice. I don't understand that. There was promoting LGBTQ stuff in Lesotho. A lot of stuff going on in African countries. Quite a bit going on in Asian countries, and then a lot of needless spending going on in a couple of European countries. It's very interesting.
Well, why
And
are we promoting, I would guess, values or American ideals in other countries with our taxpayer money? And
why
are
are
the
we
taxpayers
doing
okay with it?
non? My question is, why are we not gaining anything off of this? So we're spending this money with no return on investment in other countries. That's, I guess, in a business sense, a bad spending habit, in my opinion.
I think it'd be entirely different if you were doing things to help people in their
Oh
daily
yeah,
life. If you're starving, yep, I think the American people would want to help out starving kids in Africa.
yeah.
If
Like if they were building irrigation systems in the
Sure,
desert.
but when it comes to promoting an ideology
Hmm.
or somebody's sexual agenda,
Well, especially an ideology that's rejected by half the country.
I think it's more than half the country.
Well, yeah, yeah. Okay, so more than so you're promoting a unpopular idea, and you're taking money from people who don't support it to fund it. So you're forcing people to support something they don't support at gunpoint.
Yeah, you're basically taking taxpayer dollars,
Hmm.
um, and like you said, spending money on things that the American taxpayers wouldn't spend it on themselves.
Right.
We would help out other countries if there was a tsunami or a drought or something else,
Yeah.
but the other
Well,
issues.
this goes back to something that I've said a lot, is that the government is not and cannot be a charity. It's incapable of it. And here's the government trying to be charitable towards their ideology on the backs of people, forcing people who don't support it to fund their charity work, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yep,
And
and I think that does not bode well.
yeah,
If you were a church or a religious institution and you're collecting money from people, if they're tithing on a regular basis, they're giving money to promote their religious values, right? They wouldn't have a problem if you're spending money on a charity. But now if you're spending money against their values, right?
that's
If
when they
you're
get mad.
That's when they get mad. Exactly.
And
So
so, yeah, definitely. I'd advise looking up the stuff that got cut, all of the like programs, things that got cut out of the budget, all the spending things. Um, when I first heard some of them, it drove me up the wall. And I had to bring up the circumcision in Mozambique just because that one made me laugh. A little comic relief. But yeah, just a lot of LGBTQ stuff, and there's a good amount of funding migrants, like housing, cars, education, even. A lot of fraud being mentioned. It feels a lot like what's going on in Minnesota, such as the Feeding Our Futures fraud and other things. But
so
moving on from the spending,
circumcisions
what?
circumcisions in Mozambique is something we should cut.
I mean, I think they could cut it themselves.
A little pun there. I
I
apologize.
know. But yeah, moving on from the spending stuff, Trump mentioned a golden age of economics, which I'm hopeful for. That would be great. Waiting for the price of eggs to come down, but that's USDA regulation. He called for unity. Something interesting for you, Mike. One of the things that Trump announced at his speech was something called a gold card. He said it's like a green card, but it's a way for super rich foreigners to essentially pay their way. You can apply for this gold card, which is like a green card, path to U.S. citizenship, and it's worth $5 million. So how do you feel about
They
that?
would pay to become American citizens.
Yeah,
I would have to kick that one around.
yeah. That one's worth looking into. He only mentioned it briefly, and he says it's like a green card, but it's going to be better and more expansive. But we're looking at millionaires from other countries, giving them some kind of fast track or priority.
Well, and I do believe once you look at it, immigration was one of the biggest things, obviously, that was talked
Yeah,
about. And we've been hearing this from presidential campaigns for years, right? We
right.
need to fix this. I mean, Obama had a speech about it. Clinton had a speech about it. I thought Obama's was, we're a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And he went into those details and he said it's not fair for people who to come here legally. You're basically stepping in front of the line versus people who have done this the right way. So he was very forceful about this. And Obama was also labeled as the deporter in chief.
Yep.
So he was labeled as a person who was, deporting a lot of illegals at that time. So now Trump comes out and basically says a lot of the same things, and the
Yeah.
media villainizes him. And what does that do? Well, first of all, the people who are crossing the border, the numbers dropped pretty significantly, didn't they?
Yes. Yes, they did.
So that is a change. But at the same time, I think what it really comes down to is our immigration policies, right? We are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. I think we need to look at how our immigration system works or doesn't work. We don't, I think everybody would agree that we want law abiding, hardworking people with good intentions to come to our country, right? We don't
Right.
necessarily want gangs. We don't want violence. We don't want more crime in our country. We do want the best, right? We want people who want to come here and make a good life for themselves. I don't know that anybody would look down on that.
Yeah.
But when we see the media just hype this thing up, that does bother me. It's such an unfair thing when you're going to overlook one president deporting people, and the next one you're going to make it into a big deal because Trump is saying we're going to deport people. Now it's the worst thing in the world. Well, when Obama was doing it, you didn't care,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden it's a big deal.
I think the word you're looking for is tribalism on that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, but I wish journalists were being a little bit more intellectually honest. I wish the media, and especially when you see how slanted that media is, how does
Yeah.
that serve the people? Right? It creates this tension. You talk about how politics is more polarized, but then you see what media reports or doesn't report and builds up this tension. That's not right. That's not good.
Yeah. Oh, I'd agree with you that the media is definitely part of the problem with the divide in America. Yeah, definitely.
I know
And
there's been studies and stuff, and they do look at the leanings of reporters and so forth, and it's
mhm,
by far, Democrats in those reporters, news places, and stuff. So I don't know how you can not say that it's slanted. And that's where I think some of the polarization, some of the hype comes from. We want to fix it. Let's get back to just real journalism, reporting the news. rather than
Yeah, even
making.
if it's boring. I like boring news every once in a while. Like
Yeah,
Jimmy saved a
consistency isn't
cat from a
bad.
tree or something like that.
Yeah, show us some good news once in a while
Oh yeah, that too.
instead of always the negative.
Yeah.
But I was going to approach or talk about something that I did read, and I thought this was intriguing. So I didn't
Okay.
watch all of the debate or the speech. Didn't go into great detail on it, but a CBS poll had a 76 approval rating of the speech, and a
Yeah.
CNN poll had 69% of Americans with a positive reaction.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
no,
is,
it was a really good speech, and I recommend watching the whole thing. And I just want to touch on a couple of other things before our last little topic before we close out for the episode. Trump talked about his tariffs, his budget cuts, renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Kind of funny, not huge. Um, Declaring English as the official language of America, which is actually probably important. A reinstitution of diplomacy in the Ukraine war with Russia,
mhm.
because just briefly here, there was a really bad negotiation between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky. It ended in disaster. Zelensky wrote like an apology or something and asked if and he said he's ready for peace, so they're going to try again, which is hopefully it works out. We'll be keeping an eye on that. And
Did
the
you hear what
last,
happened? And I want to clarify something with that. We saw the blow up between Trump, Vance, and
yeah,
Zelensky, but
Zelensky,
he came here. There was the intention that he was going to sign this precious minerals deal with the president and vice president.
yep,
Okay. He met with a bunch of high ranking Democrats before he met with Trump. And then when it came to the Oval Office to sign the deal, he did not, he said he refused to sign it.
yeah, and it ended in disaster. So maybe,
Exactly.
and we're going to keep it brief because I got one thing I want to ask you about. We got a couple of minutes left here.
Sure.
So I hope the negotiation works out in benefit for everyone where we can get peace. But there was something Trump mentioned towards the end of his speech, um, acquiring Greenland. So I'm pretty, and I know it's been mentioned before, and there's been a lot of jokes about it. But really quick, Mike, how do you feel about like taking Greenland to be an American territory?
If the Greenlanders are fine with it, I don't see why we couldn't.
Okay,
Um, I think there's only like 50,000 people in Greenland, but
yeah,
strategically, what that is not just militarily, but because of their minerals, their rare earth minerals and stuff, it's
yeah,
going to be huge. Now, China has been trying to get them for a long time. And this isn't the first time the United States has talked about getting Greenland as well.
yeah.
So once Trump does it, it makes the news. But this is several times where the United States has looked at Greenland. And if they want to become American citizens, so be it. I think we should buy Canada too.
Yeah, Canada's going to be a tougher sell.
Let's
Canada's
get
mad.
rid of Trudeau, take Greenland first, and then Canada can become the 52nd state.
Okay, not all. No, 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 not yet. That's my answer to that. No, I don't like that idea. But anyway, I think we should wrap it up. We had a really good conversation today. We're going to be keeping an eye on Greenland for now, Ukraine, and probably maybe even Panama.
I have one thing that I want to talk about quick, and I know we only got a couple minutes left here, but I had a bill that went through the tax committee. It was
Okay.
cutting the lowest tax bracket. So in the state of Minnesota, if you make less than 38,000 and change per year, you would pay no income tax.
Well, that's nice.
You would basically get between a 50 cent, depending upon how many hours you work in a year, between 50 cents and $1 plus per hour raise in
Nice.
every paycheck. And
What's the bill number for that?
812,
Okay,
which,
so HF 812.
yes. So because it would also put a hole in the deficit, Democrats and others, well, we can't do this because we don't have enough money to do this.
Yeah.
And what was really funny is, and I said this is a circular argument, the Democrats say we need to tax the people in order to get the revenue to pay for the benefits to give back to the people in the lowest tax bracket.
Okay, that's socialism. That is 100% socialism.
That's
That's
socialism
how
for
it works. But
you. Mm-hmm.
anyway, we're keeping an eye on your bill, and we will talk about it next time
Sounds
on
good.
Pints and Politics. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, we got Drew, we got Mike. God bless.
Take care.